Hey, Tom here from the Run Testers. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the new Hoka Oni Oni Clifton Edge running shoe. Let's take a look. So first, let's take a look at the specs. It's going to cost you £140 or $160. It weighs in at 253 grams, and there's a 5mm drop. So in terms of the design of the Clifton Edge, it's fairly obvious that this is a slightly different shoe than what you're probably used to. It's part of the Clifton range, although similarities to that range are limited. The most important aspect of it is this edged heel extension that sits at the back of the shoe here, which actually makes the shoe look pretty big. The whole midsole section is made from EVA foam, which is combined with this kind of rubberized foam that sits on the outsole. The upper is made from this sort of mesh material that's actually a bit thicker than what you see in a lot of shoes these days. It's also reinforced at the heel and on the front section. And the first time that you start wearing it, it's quite rigid and kind of stiff material. The tongue is connected to the inside of the shoe. It's slightly cushioned. It's not a very thick tongue, but it does offer a little bit of kind of cushioning as you're wearing it. There's also this extended heel section here for pulling it on and taking it off, presumably. It doesn't really add any other value apart from adding a bit of grip. And that lower section there's no actual rubber covering it. So what you're getting is exposed, slightly rubberized foam all the way down.
So the Clifton Edge fit true to size for me. There's quite a lot going on with the upper in terms of inside the shoe. There's like kind of a lining to make it a bit more sock-like. So there's quite a lot wrapping the foot, but I found it pretty comfortable and yeah, it fit true to size.
So when it came to fit, I found the Hoka Clifton Edge pretty good actually. Overall, I think the uppers are some of the most comfortable that I've worn this year. They're fairly structured and fairly sort of tight around the foot, and they hug really nicely without being too oppressive. I will say that I'm quite a wide foot. I've got a kind of high sort of wide foot, and they were a little bit tight over the mid sort of forefoot here, mid sort of forefoot area. There was just about enough room, but I do get some sort of toe bulge in this. I ran in UK size 8.5, which is my normal size, and they were just about right, a little bit, perhaps a little bit narrow. Plenty of room in the toe box though. In terms of length, I thought the fit was good in terms of sort of being true to size. One thing I will say is that you actually have got this tongue is kind of anchored in place here by, you can see some sort of straps of fabric here. And actually when I slid my foot in, again, sort of quite high feet, I had to sort of pull quite hard on the tongues to get them into place. And particularly that sort of caused a little bit of a pinch point right there where you can sort of see the sort of Hoka time to fly symbol here, and I had to work quite hard to get the tongues to sit nicely before my run, but you know, that was a small thing, and once I was on the run it was all kind of fine. So another feature that you'll find in all Hoka shoes is it's called a bucket. Now this is sort of like a sunken sort of footbed that Hoka will sort of say is a bit like a racing driver sinking back into a nice comfortable racing seat. Now on the Clifton Edge I found that to be really quite pronounced, more so than on something like a Hoka Rincon or a Torrent or other shoes that I've tried in the Hoka lineup. And actually it's almost like the sort of that bed sort of came up around the sides of the foot, so you felt sort of quite deep in the foot. Now if you like that feeling that you're sort of sinking into sort of a comfy armchair, that is going to be good for you. Along with the cushioning, that kind of gives this kind of overall sort of very sort of plush ride. But I personally don't really sort of like that. I sort of like something that maybe is a little bit more sort of raw. Yeah, I might be out here on my own, but I tend to sort of prefer things that are a little bit less cozy.
The fit for me, it's a slightly narrow shoe, and it's probably its size is a little bit smaller than what I'm used to. So I'd probably suggest going half a size up in these shoes. The upper section is fairly well structured, so once your foot's in there and you're tied in, it does feel quite secure, and you do feel like there's quite a lot of kind of support around the midsection and the heel. So once you've got them on, they do feel pretty tight to the feet, and I had no issues at all when I was running in them.
So I've done about 50k in the Clifton Edge, and most of that's been quite slow running. That's normally what I'd expect it, the bread and butter to be for the kind of Clifton line. I've done kind of one slightly faster run in it to see how it performed at not like, more like a tempo pace, nothing actually too fast. It's quite a weird shoe, obviously not just in terms of looks. It actually runs a bit heavier than it is. It is kind of that typical Hoka thing of being quite lightweight despite the big stack of cushioning, but it felt reasonably heavy on my foot. Actually, it was really noticeable when I did a run where I swapped to the Nike Infinity run halfway through it, that the Nike actually felt a lot lighter on the foot despite being a heavier shoe. I think a lot of that comes down to just the amount of kind of rubber on the bottom here and the width of it. It feels like there's a lot of shoe contacting the ground kind of in every step you take, and it just feels like it's elongating your ground contact time maybe, and just feels like the pickup is a little bit harder on this shoe than it was in the Nike. On kind of really slow recovery runs, normally, the kind of thing I'd say is the bread and butter for the standard Clifton, this didn't feel very good, I have to say. It's a bit firmer than the Clifton I found, and yeah, it doesn't really feel nimble at all. It feels like, your legs are already heavy, it's a recovery run, and it doesn't feel like it's helping in any sense on that front. It makes them heavier. On a long run I did, however, it felt pretty damn good. I kind of did kind of 20k run, pretty slow pace, but kind of over a fairly undulating course. And I did notice this on the back during that. I'm a hill striker, especially when I'm going down hills, and this does make for a kind of smoother transition from heel to toe. It feels pretty nice for that, actually. You feel very stable when you're going down hills at speed in this shoe. And then on the kind of quick run I did, again, didn't feel very good. That kind of, again, that feeling of a lot of shoe contacting the floor just feels like it's making it a little bit hard to pick up your feet and keep going. And it wasn't a very long run, it wasn't, it didn't feel that hard or anything, but it doesn't feel like it's aiding you on that kind of run when a lot of shoes do. So the running performance wasn't outstanding for me. I don't think it's as kind of comfortable and as soft as a normal Clifton, and I don't really think you're getting benefits on the other end. I don't think it's a shoe that is then faster, so I'm not really sure exactly where I'd place it.
So when it comes to the all-important run, the Clifton Edge has me a little bit divided, actually. I thought it was a perfectly nice shoe to run in, yet not really sort of very remarkable. And actually, when you first sort of see that big hulking great kind of design, you expect it to feel something different underfoot. And I didn't really get much. They're a light shoe to run in, despite the fact they look huge. They are surprisingly light. Although I personally sort of normally will go for a shoe where there's less shoe. I sort of say it a lot, and I just, minimal is one way of describing it, but there's just sort of less overall shoe going on. And this is the opposite to that. There feels like there's quite a lot of shoe. When you put them on, you are very aware that you're wearing these underfoot, mainly because of that big kickback, and also because of the kind of protruding foam that comes out either side. Now, overall, I found them to be kind of comfortable enough. They're highly cushioned, and that does make them comfortable on the run. They're a nice sort of everyday training shoe for sure. There's decent roll through each foot strike, and there's a decent level of support coming from this kind of nice sort of structured upper and this kind of wide base, which is a little bit like something we've seen in the Nike Infinity React. What I didn't really get, and I'm probably sort of more of a mid-foot striker actually than a heel striker, was any sort of sense of benefit from this hulking great chunk of EVA foam that's sticking out at the back here. I didn't really get that, and it just made me feel like, do I really need it? Now, I get that maybe these are designed for people who are going to be striking their heels more than striking midfoot. So my take on it is, if you're a midfoot striker, then maybe these aren't going to be the shoes for you, though they are a perfectly sort of comfortable shoe. I think it's a really small point, but I found occasionally if I was running in a camber that the kind of the width of the shoe throughout the shoe actually gave me a little bit of a problem. I could feel my knees when I was starting to sort of run on stretches in a camber. I know, smart thing, you get out of the camber and run on a bit that's flat, but sometimes in the places that I run, I can't. They're sort of quite cambered roads, and traffic or whatever forces you to one side. So, and I did find that to be a little bit of a problem. It did sort of make my knees twinge a little bit. So I was really surprised to hear that these were being kind of touted as a tempo shoe. I can't see it myself. I really think they're a perfectly good slow mileage, long mileage, sort of everyday training shoe. I would not be picking these up to go fast. I really wouldn't. There are plenty of other shoes that I'd reach for first. So I think when it comes to the run, I'm 50-50 on these. I'm perfectly happy to run in them. I found them really a shoe that I could put on and run happily and run long and kind of enjoy running in. I don't think they would be my natural first choice though. I think there are other shoes that I kind of prefer to run in. A Hoka Rincon, although there's not as much cushioning in a Rincon, I feel like that shoe actually just feels a bit more versatile all round. I think I still prefer the Nike Infinity React, or the React Infinity. I wish they'd just given one name. Just all round, I just think there's less shoe there, and I just feel a bit more free when I run in those. It's a funny thing to say, but you can't wear these after your runs very much either. You know, I often sort of run to drop my little kid off at school, and you do look like a bit of a wally walking up to the school gates with these things kind of sticking out the back. So one frustration from a design point of view that I wanted to point out, it's a killer. It drives me nuts with on-running shoes that collect stones for fun, and you spend so much of your time picking them out, have those little ridges in between. It's a massive design fault with On that they can't fix until they get rid of the cloud technology, if they ever do. And it's now arrived here in a sort of slightly different guise in the Hokas. These holes, as you can see quite clearly here, just from running, have gathered tiny little stones. And when you're running, they just tap, 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 and you can hear them. It's just a bit annoying, and I don't want to have to spend all my time picking out those. And they're getting quite embedded in there, those little ones, even sort of worse than in the On. So, Hoka, please don't put holes in the soles of your shoes. I think the other thing that you can see here, if I hold up close, is that already, after I've done probably about sort of 50 miles in these, after that, already you're starting to see some of this outsole EVA start to scrape away, and that leads me to believe that durability could be an issue with the Hoka Clifton Edge as well. So one thing to watch out for.
When I first looked at these in the box, I thought they were a pretty big shoe, and when you put them next to other shoes of the same size, it looks significantly larger. So I was quite worried that these are going to be a kind of clunky piece of kit to run around in. When you pick them up and take them out of the box, they're surprisingly light for what they look like for a shoe that size. 253 grams, it's not the lightest shoe in the world, but for something that looks like that, it is pretty light. And it's something that does transfer to an extent when you're running. That heel section there the idea is apparently not just for heel strikers. So if you're a heel striker, obviously you're going to feel more kind of support and cushioning in that heel section. But it's not just designed for heel strikers. The 10.9 shoe, which Hoka only released a few months back, is a shoe designed for extreme downhills in the mountains. And that, it looks like this, but it's ridiculously extended heel section that's meant to kind of dampen that decline as you're going down a hill. That heel section is actually designed to kind of add a cradle and support, so that when your heel hits the ground, there's a lot of cushioning and padding there, so that regardless of the angle that you land at, you've still got a lot of rubber there. And then because you've landed correctly, you can then move into the forward motion in a better position. If that was thinner, like most shoes are, the idea is that you wouldn't have that kind of cradle stopping you from moving left and right or overpronating and underpronating. So I believe. In actuality, I only really noticed this heel section really having any sort of impact when I was running on a downhill, which in London isn't that common. So I actually ended up searching out hills to really test that out. And on a downhill, it does feel quite nice, but this shoe's not going to be worth buying if you're only using it for, tight downhills. If you ignore the heel, it's actually a surprisingly nice shoe to run in over longer distances. There's a lot of rubber on the bottom of the shoe, and it does feel a bit like the ground contact, as Nick I think mentions in his video. There's a lot of ground contact, and that does feel like it has an impact on the shoe, even though it is relatively lightweight. For speedier runs, I didn't really get a lot out of it. I tried to pick up the pace. It wasn't bad. It's not a race shoe. It's not a speed training shoe. it's not a ridiculously slow shoe either. So if you're just looking for a pair of shoes to kind of go training in, and you might go slightly faster sometimes, it will do the job. And it's not, there's no negatives to having that heel section on there. The real enjoyment I got from this was over longer distance, which is when I started to realise that its use is quite unclear. It feels cushioned over slow, longer distance runs, so up to, I think I was doing up to about 17 kilometres in these, and it felt nice all the way up till the end. I really liked it. Other than that, I didn't really find any major benefit from the shoe itself. Short distances, I didn't really get a lot from it, and obviously that heel section I wasn't really using a great deal. So even though there's no negatives, there's no real positives to having some of these design features in here. As will probably be mentioned by other people in this video, that durability on the outsole from this kind of rubberized foam, it's really noticeable very early on. So even though at this point it's still all there, if that's wearing down quickly, that heel section is probably going to lose any benefits it has quite early on. So the lack of rubber over the whole outsole is probably going to be an issue for this shoe.
So I don't think the Clifton Edge is a bad shoe by any means, but I just struggle to see where it would fit for most runners. It's not as comfortable, as soft as a kind of really all-out easy shoe like the Clifton, normal Clifton, or something like the Brooks Glycerin line. And I don't think it's got much punch in terms of pace, so I don't think you could use it as an all-rounder. Like something like the Hoka Rincon is a lot nimbler, a lot lighter, despite having a big stack of cushioning, a bit firmer as well. And then like other big beefy shoes that are kind of designed to be comfortable, like Nike's Infinity Run and the Saucony Triumph line, I think have got more than the Clifton Edge in terms of when you want to pick up the pace. So I feel like those shoes could work in my kind of rotation as easy day shoes, but they, if I happen to want to step up the pace a bit, they could handle it. Whereas I didn't really enjoy running quick in this. I didn't absolutely love running slow in it like I do the Glycerin and the normal Clifton. I think they're so soft, it is a really nice feeling when you're doing recovery runs. So it's kind of neither here nor there for me. So it wouldn't work for me in my rotation, I don't think. And the only kind of really standout feature on the positive side of it is this protrusion thing, which is a bit odd, but I will say it does make, for heel strikers like me, running down hills, it is quite nice. But that's not a huge selling point, overall for me. It's not like I particularly hate running down hills normally, but it is noticeable that this does provide a kind of smooth heel-to-toe transition with that kind of extra thing on the back there. So yeah, it's not a bad shoe, but I don't think it will work as an all-rounder as well as something like the Rincon, and I don't think it's as truly all-out comfortable as other shoes, so I probably wouldn't use it for my easy day shoe either.
Should you buy it? At £140, it's a lot of money for a shoe that I'm not entirely sure on what the benefits are from it, that you wouldn't get from another shoe. It's comfortable over longer distances. It's nice to wear. It's cushioned, but you get that from a lot of other shoes. The main reason you'd be spending £140 on this shoe is for this kind of heel smooth flow design that Hoka only talk about. And really, I don't feel there's a lot of benefit to that. There may be more so if you are a very severe heel striker, but even then, I'm not sure whether it would deliver exactly what you want. Having said that, it's perfectly enjoyable shoe to wear, especially if you're not speed training or anything like that. So it's not a bad shoe to own. There's no major issues I've got with it. It's just £140 for some technology that I'm not entirely sure the value of. Probably means that there are other options out there that might be better for you, including the previous Clifton models.
So should you buy the Hoka Clifton Edge? Well, I think really, truthfully, I think unless you're a big heel striker and you're going to get some of the benefit from this kind of protrusion back here that's going to help you in your sort of heel down to toe off, I wouldn't really go for it myself. I've enjoyed running in these to a certain extent, but I just think there are better options out there that do some things that I think are more useful. Like the Rincon, I just think is a less cushioned but a more versatile shoe, and it's cheaper. I think if you're looking for something that's got stability, a similar sort of nice upper but there's just less of this kind of craziness going on with the heel kick than I think a Nike React Infinity Run. So I think overall, I think if you really like a nicely cushioned shoe, there's lots of cushioning here. If you are a heel striker, there is arguably a lot to be said about that heel protrusion that's going to help. The uppers in this are fantastic. I think the fit is good. They are very comfortable to run in. I just personally, as a midfoot striker who likes a little bit less shoe, I personally would go for something else.
That's it from us. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click that little bell icon. We've also got loads of other videos on the YouTube page covering loads of different shoes, as well as our guide to the best running shoes that have been released so far. Catch you later.